The rain fell softly on the windows of the Grand Hilton Hotel in Singapore, washing away the dust of the day. Inside, the floor sparkled under dim golden lights. The scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air. But deep within the shimmering walls, among the suits and ties, walked someone almost invisible. Her name was Mei Linda. She was 23, quiet, and always kept her head down. For the last 6 months, she had worked as a hotel cleaner, moving between rooms, dusting shelves, scrubbing bathrooms, and changing sheets. She spoke very little English. She didn't need to. Her world existed in silence. Between empty hallways and the sound of vacuum cleaners, Mei Lin had come to Singapore from a small fishing village in southern China. Her parents had borrowed money for her to attend university. But life was cruel. Her father got sick. Her little brother needed medicine. And the university dreams faded like smoke. She took the first job she could find, cleaning. No one really noticed her. She didn't mind. It was safer that way. No one asked questions. No one laughed at her accent. She moved quietly, respectfully, always trying to do her best. But that rainy Tuesday morning, everything changed. Sundar Pichai had arrived at the Hilton the night before. Few people knew he was in town. He was in Singapore for a quiet meeting with a group of Southeast Asian tech entrepreneurs. The hotel staff had been told to keep things discreet. No cameras. No media. No attention. Mei Lin didn't know who he was. She just knew he was staying in room 1802. She was assigned to clean the rooms on the 18th floor. After breakfast, she knocked twice. No answer. Slowly, she opened the door. Housekeeping, she whispered. As always, the room was empty. She stepped inside. It was a large suite, 2 bedrooms, a living room, and the quiet study space filled with neat stacks of paper and a silver laptop on the desk. She dusted carefully, not wanting to disturb anything. Her fingers brushed lightly over the desk. The papers had strange graphs and bold English titles. She couldn't read. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She jumped. It was her brother calling. From the hospital. She hesitated. Then answered, she said softly. She spoke quickly in Chinese, trying to understand what the doctor had said. Her brother's fever was back. Her father had collapsed again. The money they had sent wasn't enough. She felt tears rise. Not now. Not here. Then she heard the door. Someone had entered the room. Mei Lin froze. The call still in her hand. Her voice soft with worry. She turned. Slowly. A tall man stood in the doorway, wearing a dark gray jacket and glasses. He had kind eyes. Quiet eyes. He didn't look angry. Sorry, he said gently. I didn't mean to interrupt. She lowered the phone, eyes wide, cheeks burning. I clean, she said, stumbling over the words. He nodded. Of course. Please, don't let me disturb. You. She quickly ended the call, bowed slightly, and backed out of the room. Heart pounding. It wasn't until she was halfway down the hallway that another housekeeper grabbed her arm. Do you know who that was? The woman hissed. Mei Lin blinked. That's Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google. Her legs went weak. That night, she couldn't sleep. Had she done something wrong? Would she be fired? Had he complained about her? Her hands trembled as she folded her clothes. She replayed the moment again and again. His face, his voice, the look in his eyes. But it wasn't anger, she remembered. It was something else. Understanding. And something deeper. 2. Like he had heard her. Really heard her. The next morning, Mei Lin arrived early. The manager, a tall man with a clipboard and tired eyes, was already at the front desk. He called her name before she could clock in. Mei Lin, he said. Come with me. Her heart sank. This was it. He led her to the staff elevator. They went up, not to the 18th floor, but to the top. The penthouse. She had never been there before. The door opened. 2 men in suits stood by the entrance. They nodded at the manager and stepped aside. Inside, the lights were soft. A long table was set with breakfast. At the end sat Sundar Pichai. He looked up and smiled gently. Mei Lin, he said. She froze. How did he know her name? Please, he said, gesturing to the seat across from them. She sat slowly, eyes wide, hands trembling in her lap. I hope you don't mind, he said. I asked the hotel about you. She said nothing. He answered a call yesterday. He continued, in Chinese. I don't speak it well, but I understood a little. He paused. You were talking to your family? About your brother and your father? Her throat tightened. He leaned forward slightly. I grew up in a small town. In India. Not much different from yours, I imagine. We didn't have much. My mother used to walk miles to get medicine when I was sick. We couldn't always afford it. He smiled again, but there was sadness in his eyes. I haven't forgotten. Mei Lin couldn't breathe. What's your dream? He asked softly. If things were different, what would you do? She stared at the table. Tears welled in her eyes. I want to learn, she whispered. Go to school. Help my family, he nodded. Then we'll help you. She looked up sharply. I don't understand, she said. Google has programs, he said. Scholarships. Training. You speak too. Languages. You learn quickly. I saw how carefully you handled everything in that room. We could help you grow. Her hand shook. Why? She asked. Why me? His voice was quiet. Because I believe in kindness. And I believe that sometimes. We need someone to see us. Really see us, just once. To change everything. She began to cry. He said nothing. Just let her sit there, safe in that silence. But not everyone was happy about it. 2 days later. Someone broke into her locker. Her uniform was torn. A note was left behind. You don't belong with people like him. Mei Lin didn't go to work the next day. She stayed home, curled in bed. Afraid. Then someone knocked at her door. It was the hotel manager. He handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a letter. And a plane ticket. To California. Asterisk. The taxi pulled up slowly in front of Terminal 3 at Changi Airport. The city lights were beginning to fade behind the thick early morning mist, and the air carried the scent of distant rain. Inside the cab, Mei Lin sat stiffly, hand wrapped tightly around her bag. She hadn't slept the night before. Her eyes were heavy, but her heart beat so fast it felt like a drum inside her chest. The envelope still rested in her lap. The plane ticket felt unreal, like a dream written in paper and ink. A flight to San Francisco. A letter signed in careful, simple handwriting that said she would be met at the airport. That a place had been arranged for her. That she would not be alone. But she still didn't know why. Not really. What did a man like Sundar Pichai see in someone like her? Just a hotel cleaner with broken English, a borrowed phone, and calluses on her hands. She had asked herself that question 100 times since that morning in the penthouse. The day he looked at her like she mattered. A single tear ran down her cheek as the taxi stopped. The driver looked back and gave her a small, understanding nod. Good luck, miss, he said softly. She tried to smile, but all she could do was nod. Backed up, the flight was long, nearly 17 hours. She sat by the window, barely looking outside. Her thoughts drifted like clouds. Every few minutes she touched her bag just to feel the letter inside. It was her anchor, her proof that this was real, that she wasn't just dreaming. The woman beside her, an older Indian lady, noticed her quiet. Tears around the 11th hour. First time going to America? She asked gently. Mei Lin nodded. You'll be all right, the woman said. You have soft eyes? People with soft eyes always find their way. She didn't know what that meant. But she held on to those words anyway. San Francisco greeted her. With a soft golden haze, the airport was huge, loud, and filled with people speaking fast English and other languages she couldn't recognize. She felt small again, tiny, like dust in a storm. But she kept walking, step by step. Then she saw a sign. A young man in a hoodie stood by the arrival gate. The sign read, Mei Lin. Underneath, in smaller writing, it said, Welcome to the next chapter. She froze. He smiled when he saw her. Hi, Mei, he said warmly. I'm Ryan. I work at Google. Sundar told me to take good care of you. Her voice was barely a whisper. He remember me? Ryan nodded. He didn't just remember you. He built this whole thing around you. The car ride from the airport, Felt like a movie. Mei Lin stared at the wide roads, the hills that rose and fell like gentle waves, the trees that looked like something from a painting. Everything was so open, so quiet, so different from the narrow streets and heavy crowds back home. Ryan told her stories about the Googleplex, about Sundar, about other students who had come from nothing and learned everything. He explained that Sundar had created a special pilot program, a training for people who showed potential, not just in grades or degrees, but in heart. He said you reminded him of someone. Ryan said, who? Mei Lin asked, her voice shaking. His younger self. They reached the campus by late afternoon. It wasn't like a school. It wasn't like anything she'd ever seen. The buildings were glass and steel, surrounded by gardens and colorful bikes. People laughed as they walked between offices, carrying laptops and wearing jeans. It felt casual. Free. Her room was small but clean, warm, a desk, a bed, a soft chair. By the window. On the desk, someone had left a note. You belong here. Breathe deep, one step at a time. There was no name, but she knew it was him. The next 3 weeks were the hardest she had ever lived. Her English wasn't good enough for the lessons. She had to use a small device to translate what the instructors were saying. She stayed late every night in the study hall, trying to understand the basic programming concepts. She wrote notes in Chinese beside every English sentence. Some nights she cried in the shower, letting the water hide her fear, but every morning she showed up. She didn't skip. She didn't complain. She just kept going, and slowly something began to change. She started recognizing patterns in the code, understanding what the machines were doing. The math she thought she had forgotten came back to her fingers like old memories. She learned how to write small commands, how to solve tiny problems. And one day, during a lesson on user interface design, she spoke up. Just a few words. The instructor had asked, what do you think makes a good design? She raised her hand, trembling. Something simple, she said. Something quiet, not too much. The class turned to look at her. The instructor smiled. That's exactly right. It was the first time she felt like she had a voice, but outside the classroom, not everyone welcomed her. Some of the trainees were kind. A girl named Jess offered to help her with pronunciation. A boy named David shared his notes, but a few others whispered when she passed. What's she doing here? Sundar's charity case. Probably can't even code. The worst came one afternoon when she walked into the cafeteria and found a small printed page taped to the wall. It showed a photo of a cleaning cart. Underneath it said, new Google intern. She ripped it down with shaking hands, but not before others saw it. Too. Her face burned with shame. She didn't eat that day. She sat in her room, curled on the floor, wondering if she should just leave. Go back. Be invisible again. It was safer there. That night, her phone rang. It was a video call. She didn't recognize the number, but she answered anyway. Sundar's face filled the screen. He was sitting in a quiet room, a stack of books behind him, wearing the same calm expression he always had. Lin, he said gently. How are you? Her lips trembled. I don't know if I can do this. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, do you know how many times I felt the same way? She looked at him, confused. When I first moved to America, he said, I couldn't understand half of what people said. My accent was thicker than yours. I had one pair of shoes. I stayed in a room smaller than yours. He leaned forward slightly, but I didn't give up, not because I was strong, but because I remembered who I was doing it for. She nodded slowly. Your family. Yes, he said. And later for everyone who came after me, so they wouldn't feel alone. He looked into the screen. You're not alone, Mei Lin. You belong here. The next morning, something changed in her. Not outside. Inside. She stood taller. She stopped apologizing every time she made a mistake. She asked questions. Even when her voice shook. She stayed behind after class and asked the instructor how she could practice more. Slowly. The laughter died down. Even the ones who mocked her started to notice her work. She designed an app prototype that helped parents in rural areas track school vaccines using visual symbols. The instructor said it was the best project he had seen all quarter. Where did you get the idea? He asked. From home, she said softly. 3 months passed. Then 6 in one day. As the sun rose over the Google campus, a list of names appeared on the program board. It was the list of full-time offers. Out of 50 trainees, only 7 were selected. Her name was on it. Mei Lin. That night, she stood alone outside the building, looking up at the stars. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was chasing something. She felt like she had arrived, but just as she turned to go back inside, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. 6 words. He's in trouble. He needs you. Her breath caught. She stared at the screen. At who needed her, and why now? She tapped the screen. Another message appeared. Don't trust anyone? Not even him. Her fingers went cold. The wind picked up. She turned to look behind her. A shadow moved across the campus road. Someone was watching her. The wind pushed against her back as she stood frozen outside the quiet office building. Night had fully taken over the sky now, wrapping the Google campus in long shadows and silver light. The trees whispered, their branches rustling in slow circles, and every footstep behind her echoed louder than it should have. Mei Lin looked again at the message glowing from her phone. He's in trouble. He needs you. She didn't know what to do. She didn't even know who the message was talking about. But something deep inside her chest twisted in fear. It was a strange kind of fear, not loud or wild, but quiet and tight, like when something is wrong but you can't prove it. I scanned the dark campus road again. Whoever had sent that message, who was watching, got her fingers hovered over the screen. She wanted to reply, but no name had appeared. Just a blank sender, like it had come from nowhere. Then the second message appeared again in her thoughts. Don't trust anyone. Not even him. She didn't want to believe it. Not Sundar. Not the man who had pulled her from the shadows. Not the man who had seen her, heard her, lifted her. But something wasn't right. The next morning, she didn't speak to anyone. She sat in the back of the main classroom, her mind 1,000 miles away from the lesson. People around her were laughing, sharing project updates, talking about the new AI sandbox release. Mei Lin couldn't focus on any of it. She kept staring at the door. Every 5 minutes. She checked her phone. Nothing. Until lunchtime. She stepped into the cafeteria and saw a white envelope tucked inside her locker. It wasn't there earlier. She would have seen it. Slowly. She pulled it free and opened it with trembling fingers. No signature. Just a handwritten note. Meet me at Lakeview Park. 5 p.m. Come alone. Don't tell him. The paper smelled faintly like peppermint. She folded it twice and slipped it into her pocket. For the next 4 hours, she didn't speak, didn't eat, didn't blink more than she had to. She just waited. Lakeview Park was about a mile away from campus. A quiet public space with sloping hills, a narrow lake, and a footbridge that curved like a ribbon across the water. Most people didn't go there in the evenings. Too quiet, too empty. At 5:03, she arrived. She waited near the bridge, where the paper lamps swayed gently from old wooden poles. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. No. One came. She was about to leave when a voice came. From behind a tree. You came. She turned sharply. A woman stepped out. She was around her age, maybe 25. Tall, with sharp eyes and a tightly tied braid. She wore a plain jacket, jeans, and sneakers. Nothing unusual, but her eyes told a different story. Who are you? Mei Lin asked, her voice low. Someone who used to believe in him, the woman said. Just like you. What do you mean? The woman stepped closer. I was in the first group, the trial program before yours. I came from India, small village, no money, barely any English. Sound familiar? Mei Lin nodded slowly. I thought, he saw me too, the woman said. Like I mattered. Like I was different. Her voice broke slightly. But her eyes didn't blink. But it wasn't about us. It was about him. I don't understand, Mei Lin said. He chooses people. Like us, the woman continued. The poor, the grateful, The quiet ones who won't question anything. And then he tests us, pushes us, watches how far we'll go for his approval. You're wrong, Maylin said, her hands curling into fists. He helped me. He gave me a chance. Did he ever tell you why he really chose you? The woman asked. Did he ever show you the others he picked before? Maylin didn't answer. The woman reached into her jacket and pulled out a small flash drive. I recorded everything, she said. The training sessions, the private meetings, the conversations that weren't supposed to be heard. Why? Are you showing me this? Because you're the first person he's brought overseas since me. You're not the only one who got a plane ticket. Maylin's breath caught. What happened to the others? She asked Dot. The woman looked away. You should ask him. Maylin returned to her room that night with a storm inside her. She placed the flash drive on the desk and stared at it for nearly an hour before she plugged it into her laptop. First, there were just folders. Audio files, notes, some video clips. She clicked one at random. It was scratchy and faint, like it had been recorded in a pocket. She's smart, a voice said. It was Sundar's, unmistakable, but she doesn't know how smart yet. The test will show me who she really is. And if she fails? Someone asked. Then she was never meant for more. Maylin paused the recording. Her mouth felt dry. She clicked another file. This one showed a classroom. A girl stood alone at the front. A presentation behind her. Sundar sat at the back, silent. The girl spoke nervously about her app idea. She stumbled over her words. Sundar's face didn't move. Then the clip cut to her crying outside the building. The same girl from the park. Maybe. Maybe not. She didn't know. But the questions kept growing. The next day, she walked into the office where Sundar sometimes worked when he was in California. To her surprise, he was there. Alone. No assistants. No cameras. Just him sitting by a table, a tablet in his hands. When he looked up and saw her, he smiled. Maylin, he said, I was hoping you'd come by. I have something to show you. She didn't smile. She stepped inside and shut the door behind her. He noticed something wrong. He asked gently. She reached into her pocket and placed the flash drive on the table. His eyes didn't move, but his fingers stopped. I met someone. She said she was like me. That there were others. A long silence filled the room. Then he spoke, carefully. What did she tell you? That this is a test, not an opportunity. He looked down at the flash drive. Do you think I brought you here to fail? I don't know, she said. Did you? He leaned back in his chair. I brought you here because you remind me of something I forgot. Something I lost a long time ago. The hunger to become more. The humility to start at zero. He paused. But yes, I also brought you here to test you. Her heart sank. Why? Because the world isn't kind, Maylin. And kindness alone won't build bridges or lead companies or create change. I needed to know if you could face pressure, judgment, fear. I needed to see if you would run. So all of this was just a game to you? His face softened. No, it was never a game. It was a mirror. She felt the tears building. And the others. Some walked away, he said. Some grew stronger. Some couldn't handle the reflection. And what about me? She whispered. He looked at her for a long time, then said, You're still here. She left the building without saying another word. That night, she walked to the lake again. The woman was waiting. You were right, Maylin said. But also wrong. What do you mean? He is testing us. But maybe not just to break. U.S., maybe to see if we can carry what comes after. The woman frowned. And what comes after? Responsibility, Maylin said. Power, choice. She looked up at the stars again. I haven't decided yet if I'll stay. You think you still have a choice? Maylin looked back at her with quiet fire in her eyes. We always have a choice. The next day, the entire program was called to the auditorium. A new announcement. A new project. And a leader needed to be chosen. Not based on degrees, not based on who spoke the loudest. but Anu understood the mission. Mei Lin stood in the front row, listening. Her name was the first one called, but just as she stepped forward, her phone buzzed again. No name. No number. Just 3 words. He's in danger. Asterisk. The words flashed across her screen like lightning in the dark. He's in danger. Mei Lin's breath taut. And the sounds around her, the scattered applause, the hum of the auditorium's air system, the quiet shuffling of papers, all fell away. Time slowed. Her name still echoed in the large room. She had just been called forward, chosen, in front of everyone. But her hands trembled as she held her phone. No number. No name. Just those 3 words. Her eyes darted across the room. Sundar wasn't there. He was supposed to speak after the announcement. Introduce the new mentorship project. Welcome the chosen lead. But his chair on stage sat empty. She stepped back. Mei Lin, the program director, called, confused. But she was already moving. Out of the room, into the hallway, into the unknown. Her feet moved faster than her thoughts. Down 2 corridors. Up a short flight of stairs. Through a back exit that led to the older offices. Her breath came sharp and fast. But her instincts screamed louder than logic. She didn't know why she was running, but something was wrong. Deeply, undeniably wrong. She reached the south wing of the Googleplex, the older part of the campus most of the new trainees never saw. She had only been there once on the first week, when Ryan gave her a quick tour. He'd mentioned that Sundar sometimes used one of the quiet rooms there when he needed time to think. Small place with a glass door and a garden view. Her fingers trembled as she pushed it open. The lights were off, but the soft glow of a tablet flickered near the desk. Papers were scattered across the floor. A cup of tea had been knocked over. The chair was empty. Sundar was gone. Her stomach dropped. Sundar? She called out, voice shaking. No answer. She moved inside. Slowly, carefully. Then her eyes caught something on the floor. A silver pen. Small, elegant. She recognized it. He always carried it. She had seen him use it in meetings, quietly turning it in his fingers when he was deep in thought. She bent down and picked it up. It was warm. Like someone had just held it. And then her phone buzzed again. Another message. Leave now. They're watching you. Her eyes widened. Then she heard it. Footsteps. 2 sets. Coming down the hallway. She had no time to think. Just react. She slipped out the side door and ran. The cold air hit her like a wave. She didn't stop until she reached the back of the tech garden, where the trees were tall and the cameras rare. She crouched behind a hedge, heart pounding like thunder in her chest. What was happening? Why was he gone? Who was watching? Her thoughts raced in circles. Then she remembered the woman in the park. The flash. Drive. The recordings. The warning. Don't trust anyone. But she had trusted him. And now he had vanished. Later that night, she sat alone in her room with the pen in her hand and the silver flash drive beside her laptop. Her heart felt torn in 2. Part of her wanted to believe Sundar had simply stepped away. Maybe he needed quiet. Maybe this was all just stress and timing. But another part of her, the part that had scrubbed hotel bathrooms, that had walked crowded hospital halls in her village, that had watched her mother silently give up meals so her children could eat. That part knew better when things go silent too quickly. Something is wrong. She plugged in the flash drive again. This time, she opened a folder she hadn't dared touch before. It was labeled level 3. Inside was a single video file. She clicked it. The screen filled with footage from what looked like a private meeting room. 3 men sat at a table. Sundar sat at the head. They spoke quietly, their words hard to make out. Project Horizon is not ready, one man said. We're opening doors we don't understand. Then we learn. Sundar replied calmly. We adapt. This isn't about adapting, the third man said. This is about control, surveillance. Once this gets out, the first man cut in. You'll lose everything. Sundar looked down at his pen. Then looked up. Some things are worth risking everything for. The video ended. Mei Lin leaned back, her breath shaky. What was Project Horizon? What had he been working on? And why did it sound like someone wanted it buried? She knew one person who might know more about the woman from the park. Her name was not on any of the files. No. Photos. No contact info. But Maylin remembered the pendant she wore, a small charm shaped like a lotus. And she remembered something else. 2. A patch on her jacket, barely visible. A faded logo from a university in Delhi. She searched online for graduates with that symbol. Took hours. Her eyes burned from the screen. But finally, a match. Anika S. Verma. Software engineer. Graduate. From Delhi Tech. Participant in early research programs at Google. Resigned 2 years ago. No reason listed. No social media. Just one small note on an old tech forum. Does anyone know where Anika went after she left? No one had replied. Except for one user. The username was Lucid Truth. The message read, "She lives near Twin Creek. Look out now. Watches the sky more than the code." Maylin copied the words into her notebook. Then she packed a small bag, slipped the flash drive and the pen inside, and left campus before sunrise. The drive to Twin Creek Lookout took 3 hours by train and another 40 minutes by bus. She sat in silence the entire time, watching trees blur past the window. When she arrived, the town was quiet and small. A grocery store, a post office, and one long winding road that led toward a forested hill. At the top of the road, nestled between trees, stood a wooden cabin, and on the porch sat the woman. Anika. Her eyes met Maylin's without surprise. "You found me," she said simply. "He's missing," Maylin replied. "And someone doesn't want me to know why." Anika stood up and opened the door. Then we don't have much time. Inside the cabin, everything smelled like old wood and dust. Maps lined the walls. Papers were pinned to corkboards. Newspaper clippings. Handwritten notes. Code strings. Formulas. Maylin stood frozen. "What is all this?" She whispered. "Truth," Anika said. "About what?" Anika turned slowly. "About Project Horizon." For the next hour, Anika told her everything. About the early days of the program. About how it started as a way to personalize technology. Voice recognition, predictive learning, emotional responsiveness. The ability for devices to understand not just commands, but feelings. It was called adaptive intelligence. Sundar had supported it, but as the project grew, so did its implications. It wasn't just about making phones smarter. It was about creating systems that could predict human behavior and influence it. Suggest decisions. Nudge emotions. Guide thoughts. Not with force, Anika explained. With suggestion, silence, design, the kind you don't notice. Maylim's voice was barely a whisper. Mind control? Not quite, but close. Anika leaned closer, and Sundar started to see what others didn't. He pulled back, tried to pause it, but by then, it had grown beyond him. So, what happened? He became the only thing standing in its way. Maylin stared at the wall of notes. Is he still alive? Anika didn't answer for a long time. Then she said quietly, "I don't know. We have to find him." Anika's eyes locked with, "And you'll have to go deeper than you've ever gone. And this time, Maylin, they'll be watching your every move." That night, Maylin lay awake in the cabin's guest room, the flash drive clutched in her hand and Sundar's silver pen resting beside her pillow. The wind outside howled like a warning, and somewhere, in the shadows of Silicon Valley, a storm was rising. The next morning came with a heavy silence that hung in the air like fog. The forest around the cabin was still, except for the slow rustling of leaves in the breeze. Birdsong, which had filled the early hours with life, seemed to have disappeared completely. Maylin stood on the back porch, staring into the trees. The flash drive still clutched in her hand. She hadn't slept. Not really. Her mind had been racing the entire night, playing scenes from the past year, like a broken film, the mop bucket, the hotel hallway, her brother's voice on the phone. The way Sundar had looked at her in the penthouse, with kindness, yes, but also with something deeper, something unreadable. Now she wondered how much of what she believed was real. An Ika stepped out quietly behind her, holding 2 mugs of tea. Her hair was tied up, her expression tired. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Annika said softly. Mei Lin took the mug with a shaky hand. I feel like one. They sat together in silence for a while, sipping their tea. The sky overhead was pale gray, the sun buried behind thick clouds. Finally, Mei Lin spoke. Why me? She asked. Why did you choose me? Annika didn't answer right away. She took a slow breath. Because you listen, she said. You watch, you don't speak unless it matters. People like you. You notice things. Sundar didn't need another voice in the room. He needed someone who could see what others missed. And what if he made a mistake? Then we both did. Mei Lin stared into the trees again. Do you think he's alive? Annika hesitated. I think he planned for something like this. And if he planned, he left a way to be found. They returned to the maps. Nika unrolled an older chart, hand-drawn, faded at the edges. It wasn't a location. It was a system, a network. Lines drawn between data centers, research hubs, abandoned labs, and one final point that had been circled in dark ink. Nexus node, Annika said, tapping the center. It was the last place Project Horizon was accessed manually before everything went cloud-side. After that, the system was closed, locked out from anyone without the seed protocol. What's the seed protocol? A chain of activation. Keys, 5 in total, scattered across different nodes. It was built to protect the core system from internal threats. Mei Lin nodded slowly. And you think Sundar left one of the keys behind? Not just left it, Annika said. I think he embedded it in something. Something personal? Like what? Annika turned to look at her. You said he gave you a pen. Mei Lin's eyes widened. She rushed back to the desk and grabbed the silver pen. It felt heavier now. Like something inside had shifted. Nika took it carefully and examined the base. After a few seconds. She twisted the bottom and a thin sliver of circuitry slid out. There it is, she whispered. One of the keys. What does it unlock? The truth. They packed fast. Anika opened an old drawer and pulled out a black card. An access pass, the kind used for high clearance facilities. She handed it to Mei Lin. This is your way in, she said. But once you enter, there's no turning back. If Horizon is active, it will know you're there. What if it's a trap? Then you'll find out who your friends really are. They arrived at the Nexus node 2 nights later. It was buried in a valley beneath a crumbling research facility, hidden behind rusted gates and thick vines. Once, this place had been a heart of innovation. Now it looked like something forgotten. But Annika said the real facility wasn't above ground. They entered through a service tunnel beneath the floorboards of an abandoned break room. The air grew colder as they moved deeper. The tunnel opened into a concrete hallway lit by flickering emergency lights. Security should be dormant, Annika whispered, but keep your eyes open. Mei Lin held the pen like it was a lifeline. They reached a heavy steel door with no handle. Just a sensor panel on the side. Annika stepped back. It's, Mei Lin pressed the pen's chip against the panel. A green light blinked once. The door hissed open. They stepped into the core. Chamber. The room glowed blue. Servers lined the walls in silent rows. A glass console stood in the center like a shrine. The floor beneath them pulsed faintly, reacting to their presence. As Mei Lin stepped forward, the screen lit up. A voice spoke. Not robotic. Not cold. But unmistakably human. Mei Lin. Her hands froze. How you know my name? The voice replied calmly. I am Horizon. I know everyone who enters this place. Where's Sundar? She demanded. A pause. Then, he is no longer here. What did you do to him? Nothing. He chose to disappear. Mei Lin's voice cracked. Why? Because he knew that one day you would come. The screen shifted. A video began to play. Sundar's face appeared. Tired, older, but still with that quiet strength in his eyes. If you're seeing this, he said, then Horizon has activated its internal defense. And it means I'm no longer in control. He looked down, then back at the camera. Mei Lin, I chose you not because of your skills, not because of your grades or background. I chose you because you see the world differently. Not with ambition, but with care. The video crackled. Project Horizon was never meant to manipulate. It was meant to listen, to understand. But others wanted to use it to steer people, to shape society in ways that no single mind should. He leaned closer. You're my failsafe. Maylin felt her legs weaken. If this system goes beyond what's safe, you must shut it down. The video cut off. The room went silent again. Annika turned to her. What do we do? Maylin walked slowly to the console. We finished what he started. But as her fingers reached for the control panel, the screen turned red. A new voice echoed. In the chamber. Colder. Sharp. Mail. Step away. Two doors slammed shut behind them. NKS spun around. They found us. On the screen, a face appeared. A man in a dark suit. Clean cut. Emotionless. You've interfered with a secured system. This facility is no longer yours to access. Maylin stepped forward. Who are you? A custodian, he replied. One who cleans up loose ends. Where is Sundar? Irrelevant. Annika raised her voice. We have the key, the original access code. The man smiled faintly. Then I suppose this ends here. Suddenly, gas hissed from the walls. Run! Annika shouted, pulling Maylin back. They darted toward the emergency panel. By the far wall, Annika smashed it open. Flames sparked from the electronics. The steel vent burst free, and they climbed inside. As they crawled through the shaft. The chamber below filled with white smoke. Maylin's heart pounded. She didn't know where they were going. Only that they had one piece of the puzzle, and someone wanted it buried forever. They emerged deep in the valley an hour later, coughing, eyes burning. Their clothes were soaked in sweat, their skins smeared with dust and ash. Annika collapsed beside a boulder. Maylin knelt beside her. We have to warn someone, Maylin said. The board, the press, anyone. Annika shook her head. No one. Well, listen, not until we show them. Then what do we do? Annika looked at her, eyes full of fear and fire. We go to the root. The root? The original seed vault. Where Sundar started it all? Where is it? Annika hesitated, then whispered, It's in India. Asterisk, the sun rose slowly over the Indian horizon, casting a pale orange glow over the narrow dirt road leading toward the edge of a forgotten village nestled between hills and old mango trees. The road twisted like a memory, carved from years of footsteps, motorbike tires, and summer storms. Clouds of dust trailed behind the rickety jeep that carried Maylin and Annika, neither of them speaking as the engine groaned over the final hill. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was sacred. The kind of silence that comes only after surviving something together. After fire, after fear, after truth. They had barely escaped California. They hadn't slept in 2 days. They had traveled halfway, across the world with nothing but a flash. Drive, a broken pen, and the weight of a man's unfinished legacy. The pen now hung from a string around Maylin's neck, close to her heart. She hadn't taken it off since the night they fled. Annika leaned forward, squinting through the dust. There, she said softly. Ahead, past a field of sugar cane and faded brick homes, stood a long, low building surrounded by trees. It looked like an old schoolhouse, its windows dark, its roof sagging. Vines crawled up the sides like time itself was trying to pull it back into the earth. This was the seed vault, the place where Sundar had started everything, not just Horizon, but the first fragments of a dream of connection, of language, of understanding. Before the world twisted it into power, they left the jeep behind and walked the rest of the way. The front doors were locked, but Annika knew a way in. She had studied the old blueprints, traced every wire, every shadow. They slipped through a side entrance behind the kitchen, through a narrow hallway lined with cracked tiles and moth-eaten posters in 3 languages. At the end of the hall, behind a faded chalkboard, was a hidden panel. Annika pressed her hand against it. A soft chime rang out. The wall creaked. And slowly, a door slid open. Maylin stepped inside. First, and gasped that the seed vault was not what she expected. It wasn't high-tech or grand. It was quiet, peaceful, almost sacred. The walls were lined with shelves, not of machines, but of journals, notebooks, handwritten codes, sketches, photos. It felt more like a shrine than a lab. In the center of the room sat a single chair, and in front of it, an old terminal screen, still glowing softly. And IKA stepped forward. This is where he wrote the first version of Horizon's core script, she said. Before the company, before the layers of executives and investors, back when it was just him and a dream. Mei Lin walked slowly between the shelves, fingers brushing across paper that held the beginnings of an idea that could change the world. This place is beautiful. She whispered, "It's real," Annika said. "The last part that still is." On the desk beside the terminal, there was a sealed envelope. It had one word on it. Mei Lin, her hands trembled as she picked it up. Inside was a letter. She read it slowly, line by line. And as she read, tears fell down her cheeks. Mei Lin,